Hello everyone and welcome back to our journey through human prehistory. Today we're rediving into one of the most exciting and transformative periods for our species, the Upper Paleolithic. This era, stretching from roughly 50,000 years ago to about 12,000 years ago, is where we see modern humans, Homo sapiens, truly come into their own. It's not just about surviving anymore. It's about thriving, innovating, and creating. This is the age of a massive cultural explosion, sometimes called the Great Leap Forward, and it laid the foundations for the world we know today. So grab your virtual torches and let's explore the world of our ancient ancestors. Let's set the stage. The Upper Paleolithic begins around 50,000 years ago. At this point, Homo sapiens have been around for a while, but something incredible starts to happen. We see a rapid acceleration in creativity and complexity that is simply breathtaking. It's as if a switch was flipped. Why did this happen? The exact reasons are still debated by archaeologists and anthropologists. Some think it was a cognitive leap, perhaps a final tweaking of our brain's wiring that unlocked new ways of thinking. Others suggest it was driven by social factors, like growing populations forcing people to interact more, share ideas, and compete, which in turn spurred innovation. It could also be linked to language becoming fully modern and complex, allowing for the transmission of intricate ideas from person to person and generation to generation. Whatever the cause, the effect was profound. This wasn't a slow, gradual change. It was a revolution in human behavior that set our ancestors on a completely new trajectory. One of the most tangible signs of this leap is the revolution in tool technology. The older, chunkier tools of the Middle Paleolithic, like the Mousterian flake tools, were effective, but the Upper Paleolithic toolkit was on another level entirely. The hallmark of this new age was the blade. Instead of just knocking a few flakes off a core, people learned to prepare a stone core in a very precise way, allowing them to strike off long, thin, sharp flakes or blades. Think of it like a dispenser. This technique was incredibly efficient. From a single core, you can now produce dozens of sharp, standardized blades, minimizing waste and maximizing output. These blades were the Swiss Army knives of the Stone Age. They could be used as they were, for cutting, or they could be modified into a huge variety of specialized tools: scrapers for cleaning hides, burins for engraving bone, and deadly projectile points for hunting. This technological explosion is beautifully illustrated by the different cultures that archaeologists have identified based on their distinctive toolkits. Early on, we have the Aurignacian culture, known for its strong blades and bone tools. Later, we see the Gravettian, and then around 22,000 years ago, the Solutrean culture emerges in what is now France and Spain. The Solutrean stonework is just astonishing. They created these incredibly thin, beautifully crafted laurel leaf points. They are so finely made that some researchers believe they were more ceremonial or status symbols than everyday tools, true works of art in stone. But the innovation didn't stop with rock. For the first time, we see widespread and sophisticated use of other materials like bone, antler, and ivory. People weren't just picking up a bone and sharpening it. They were carving, engraving, and shaping it with incredible skill. They created the first sewing needles with drilled eyes, allowing them to stitch together tailored clothing from animal hides, which was a game changer for surviving cold climates. They invented barbed harpoons for fishing and hunting aquatic mammals, and one of the most significant inventions of the era, the atlatl, or spear thrower. The atlatl is essentially a lever that acts as an extension of the arm, allowing a hunter to throw a spear with much greater force, speed, and accuracy. This weapon revolutionized hunting, making it possible to take down large, dangerous game like mammoths and bison from a safer distance. This advanced technology was a key factor in another defining feature of the Upper Paleolithic, the global expansion of Homo sapiens. Equipped with better tools, tailored clothing, and more complex social strategies, our ancestors were unstoppable. They pushed into environments that were previously uninhabitable. Around 50,000 years ago, they made the sea crossing to Australia a remarkable feat of navigation. They pushed north into the frozen landscapes of Siberia, learning to build shelters from mammoth bones and hides. And from Siberia, they made the final great continental leap, crossing the Bering Land Bridge into the Americas. By the end of the Upper Paleolithic, Homo sapiens had colonized every habitable continent on Earth, a feat no other hominin species had ever achieved. As they spread, they encountered other human groups, like the Neanderthals in Europe and the Denisovans in Asia. The story of these encounters is complex, and still being unraveled through genetic studies, but it seems to have involved a mix of competition, displacement, and even interbreeding, with our species ultimately becoming the last humans standing. But perhaps the most captivating legacy of the Upper Paleolithic is the birth of art. For the first time in human history, we see an explosion of symbolic expression. Our ancestors weren't just surviving. They were recording their world, their beliefs, and their experiences in stunningly beautiful ways. The most famous examples, of course, are the cave paintings. Deep inside caves like Lascaux and Chauvet in France and Altamira in Spain, they painted a world teeming with life. Using charcoal for black and ochre for reds and yellows, they covered the cave walls with magnificent images of horses, bison, mammoths, and lions. These weren't just simple doodles. The animals are often depicted with a sense of motion and realism that is astounding. The artists used the natural contours of the cave walls to give their paintings a three-dimensional feel. What was the purpose of this art? We can only speculate. Were they hunting magic meant to ensure a successful hunt? Were they records of shamanic visions or religious ceremonies? Were they simply stories or a way of marking territory? We may never know for sure, but standing in one of these painted caves is a profoundly moving experience, a direct connection to the minds of people who lived over 20,000 years ago. Beyond the grand galleries of cave art, there was also a world of portable art. Archaeologists have found thousands of small, personal items that were carved and decorated. And among the most enigmatic of these are the so-called Venus figurines. These are small sculptures, usually carved from stone, bone, or ivory, depicting female figures, often with exaggerated features. The most famous is the Venus of Willendorf, found in Austria. Like the cave paintings, their meaning is a mystery. Are they fertility symbols, representations of a mother goddess, self-portraits, or even teaching aids for young women? Their widespread distribution from France all the way to Siberia suggests they represented a shared set of ideas or beliefs across vast distances. They show us that these weren't isolated, brutish cavemen. They were people with rich symbolic lives, complex beliefs, and a shared culture that connected distant groups. So what happened to this vibrant world? The Upper Paleolithic didn't end with a bang, but with a gradual change in the world's climate. Around 12,000 years ago, the last ice age, known as the Pleistocene epoch, came to an end. The massive ice sheets that had covered much of the northern hemisphere began to melt, and the planet entered a new, warmer, and more stable geological period. The Holocene, the epoch we still live in today. This climate change had a massive impact. The vast, open grasslands, home to the great herds of mammoth, bison, and horses, began to shrink, replaced by expanding forests. The megafauna that had been the focus of Upper Paleolithic hunters began to decline, with many species going extinct. Human societies had to adapt. The old ways of life, centered on hunting large migratory herds, were no longer sustainable in many places. People began to exploit a wider range of resources, including smaller forest animals, fish, birds, and plants. This period of transition is known as the Mesolithic, or Middle Stone Age. This adaptation, this shift towards a broader diet and a more settled existence, set the stage for the next great revolution in human history, the invention of agriculture and the dawn of the Neolithic. The Upper Paleolithic was a critical chapter in our story. It was the time when we Homo sapiens truly became the humans we are today. It was an age of incredible technological innovation, of daring exploration that took our species to every corner of the globe, and of a breathtaking explosion of art and symbolism that reveals the dawn of the modern human mind. The people of this era were not just surviving the Ice Age. They were masters of it, creating a rich and complex world that we are still working to understand. They left us a legacy written in stone, bone, and ochre, a testament to the creativity, resilience, and adaptability that defines our species. Thanks for joining me on this deep dive into our past. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe for more journeys into the story of humanity. See you next time.